What's up, YouTube family? You are back on the other side with me, Mike G, for another awesome fighter interview. Tonight, we have a former UFC fighter with an amazing 69 MMA fights to his credit. He is a pioneer, a showman, and an all-around badass. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Rich No Love Clementi. How's it going, Rich?
Doing good, man. How about yourself?
I'm doing great. It is a pleasure to meet you face to face as much as we can and have you on the channel, man. I've been watching you most of my adult life, so this is truly an honor. If you could see, I have goosebumps.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it.
I would like to, if you don't mind, I like to start out. I care a lot about where I came from, so I like to talk to people about where they came from. You were born in New Jersey. Tell me a little bit about family life and growing up. Tell me about mom and dad.
Yeah, so man, I mean, we could probably do the whole interview just off that. But unlike a lot of guys, I think that try to they use that experience as like a negative, and I don't really look at things as positive or negatives in life. I look at them as that like they were important parts of my chapter, things I had to go through, and things of that nature. So I mean, growing up was really, really rough, to be honest. I surely wasn't the best kid by any means. I mean, most of the kids that I hung around with actually through elementary school, their lives didn't turn out so well, and most of them spent some time in prison and things of that nature. But I moved around a lot, man. I was in like 20 different schools from kindergarten to 12th grade, man.
Wow, it's hard to establish friendships when you're moving that much.
Yeah, well, I almost wound up getting like a gimmick out of it, man, because it was like, I was a blonde-haired, ripped-up little young guy. So, I mean, you can imagine like moving to small towns in like Athens, Alabama, and Willits, Texas, and things, Huntsville, Alabama. It's like, and I'm this guy from New Jersey, so like I wound up almost getting like a gimmick out of it, man, and being that guy from up north that moved to southern states.
Yeah, I'm sure you stuck out like a sore thumb, man.
100%. Sometimes it was really in my favor, and I mean, I remember when I played football in Texas, man. Like they actually, like like even the coaches were like involved, man. They were doing anything they possibly could to get me to quit the team because those kids have been playing since they were like 5, 6 years old together, and here I am. I was a great athlete, and I'm like disrupting, stealing spots and stuff. The coaches didn't like it, the dads didn't like it, So sometimes it was beneficial. Most with the ladies, to be honest, and then other things not so much.
Gotcha. What was your first real exposure to combat sports?
You mean to see, moving to 20 different high schools doesn't come without its challenges by itself. So, I mean, I would say probably my 100+ fights as a little kid, probably. I was just really rough around the edges. And I was like that guy that if you looked at wrong in school, like I had no problem punching you and getting expelled for that. But I would say that my first real experience with combat sports, I would like to say is wrestling, right? I mean, that's a combat sport. And I wrestled in New Jersey in elementary school. Unfortunately, I moved to some southern states. I came back my senior year and did fairly well. It was like 19-2 or 19-3 or something like that. And New Jersey's a hard spot to plop out, like not wrestle my junior or sophomore year and just come back my senior year. But I was just super tough, man. And I was really, really strong. I think that was probably the number one thing that helped me. I mean, my technique wasn't really all that great just because of the lapse of time with training. But yeah, it was just, I would say wrestling.
Okay. After high school, first of all, thank you for your service. After high school, you went into the Navy, the Seabees. Is that right?
Yeah. So when I first joined the military, I wanted to go into underwater construction. That was one of the things I was just excited on. I moved out of my house at like 16 years old. I moved in with my grandmother like my last year of high school, and I just really didn't have a lot going for me. And I always loved the military. Like anybody that grew up around my era, we all had GI Joe and stuff like that, and it's a lot of patriotism there, watching Rambo and things of that nature. So I always wanted to go in the military. So I joined up. You can't directly go into underwater construction. You have to do like a rate that's like a linkage rate, I guess per se,
Okay.
and that's why I joined the Seabees. I wind up getting screwed around a little bit once I went to boot camp. They said that I had to do all my dive chamber testing and stuff while I was in boot camp. Good enough. I asked her, like, no, you got to wait till you get to your duty station to do that. And then once I got to my duty station at technical school, they were like, no, you should have did that in boot camp. So they wanted me to extend a little bit. I already had like an 8-year enlistment, and I just wasn't interested in doing that. So, did my time in the Navy, loved it. I deployed a whole bunch of different countries, Guam. I was over for the Yugoslavic liberation over in Bosnia. Spent time in Spain, and with the guys that I spent a lot of time with. Man, it was an awesome experience in my life. I wish that maybe not the way the military is today, that's for sure, with all the wokeism and things of that nature floating around. But I really think there's a lot of value if younger adults would join the military, put the time, have those sacrifices. And I think we'd be in a little bit of a different a spot in the country, man, than we are right now. So I love the military, man. It did a lot for me. It helped forge who I am, just like fighting did. Those two things together is everything of who I am, the business guy today. So absolutely very grateful for that experience and the guys I shared life with.
That's amazing, man. I read that you were mobilized after 9/11.
Yeah, so it was tough. I actually started fighting. I actually started fighting when I was in the Navy, and it was like super hush hush. Like you definitely weren't allowed to do that. But there was a guy, Kyle Jensen, who not Kyle Jensen. What was his name? Brad Kohler knocked him out in the UFC. He was supposed to fight in Stomp of the Swamp, one of Jamie Levine's shows that were down here, and they needed a last-minute replacement. I was just like a tough guy, like everybody kind of knew that. So I was like, "Hey, I'll go," and I want to do fighting a horrible decision against a guy who was like 15-1 or something like that. But I was totally addicted after that. Totally addicted.
I was too. The first taste of MMA I've never been lucky enough to train or fight. I kind of got a late start at that, but yeah, I would have been I would have been all over it too. As someone who's been in the service, when you were mobilized, what kind of feelings are going through your mind and in your heart when that's going on?
Yeah, so
just extreme anger.
No, it's kind of a funny story, right? I didn't finish, so I apologize. So I got out of the Navy because they weren't allowing me. It was just kind of constant issue after issue when I was trying to get the rate that I joined up for, right? I wanted to be challenged. It's in my personality. So, they basically pulled my bluff and called my bluff. And I said, look, guys, I'm just going to get out now. Now, here's a guy that actually loved the military, but yet, I'm having to I feel a little jaded at this point, Yeah. So I actually went in the Air National Guard. I was security forces with the Air Force, and I was going to school. I was going to college at the same time 9/11 happened. I actually watched it live on TV. Obviously, when the first plane hit, everybody, turned the TVs on, and we're all watching. And when the second plane hit, like everyone knew, like, wow, this isn't an accident. So that day I walked up to my professor and, I told him, I was like, hey, look, this is the last day I'm going to be in your class. And then I went back to active duty. And this was tough because I had a few fights lined up in Japan already. I was starting to get some steam. I got out of the Navy maybe a year or two prior. So I was really starting to get some traction. People were liking my fighting style. And, I had my first set of big fights coming up in Japan, which I had to cancel on. But what's funny is everybody in front of me. So the way it worked, right? We get manila envelopes. We're all sitting down at a table. And we're getting our envelopes. Everybody in front of me, Afghanistan. And I get a folder that said, civilian clothes billet in Cyprus. And I was like, what? Huh? And then to find out, I'm there like a week before the 90-day club war happened. So all the DJs in Europe go there. So I guess because I had such a crappy draw with going to Bosnia twice, I really looked at that as that was God's way of repaying me a little bit. But man, I'll tell you, that was a ridiculous time of my life. It was absolutely amazing.
Oh, you was it 1999 you made your professional debut?
Man, if you're looking at it, your answer is probably better than mine.
I got 3 different dates online. That's why I asked.
Yeah, Chris Seifert was his name.
Okay, what is that first professional fight? Are the nerves?
That was I never had anything other than a first professional fight. No amateur or anything. Just kind of jumped right in.
No underground behind the bar. Set up the tent yourself. Take it down afterwards. Stuff.
Yeah, no, I mean there was some kickboxing and some Sancho fights. I wound up fighting like the Chinese Sancho champion or something like that. I mean just some weird stuff like that. But as far as MMA went, that was my first experience with mixed martial arts.
Okay, your UFC debut, if the internet is correct, was against Eve Edwards. That's a tough debut, man. How did that go? What was it like
Yeah.
the UFC finally?
Yeah, so it was an eye-opening experience. I kind of got thrown right in at that time. Yeah, and that's what's funny. I got some friends of mine like Brendan Allen. We've joked in the past and stuff, and he's like, "Oh, the guys now are so much more talented," and I'm like, "Dude, the guys back then were so much more tougher." And the thing is like you didn't get a UFC opportunity because you had purple hair or you were a gimmicky guy on the microphone. That sells. You own because right there was barely any pay-per-views around that time. I mean, the sport was still trying to get traction, and for whatever reason, they really didn't highlight a lot of guys back then. They didn't go into their story. So it was like the reason why he fought in the UFC was because you're the badass dude, And I mean, even at that time period, I remember specifically, it's like even at smaller shows, like if you tapped out from strikes, you were like blackballed from the sport. Like you just didn't do it. Like promoters, like, oh, you tapped out in your last fight. I'm not interested. So I think there was a little bit of a different guy. And when it came to fighting Eve Edwards, you have to remember too, there wasn't all this. You film you could watch on guys. I mean, unless you bought a $29 VHS like Shudo or Valley Tudo, VHS cassette tape, you weren't seeing any tape on guys. You just weren't. It didn't exist. So he was a really, really tough guy to fight. I left that fight with my head down. I thought I was going to move to Iowa after that fight. And, I was really going to make some life decisions specifically after that fight. So really what I think is it wasn't my time to do those things. And I know I would have went a different path if I did. So I'm a big believer in life. Like decisions aren't mine to make sometimes, and it's like, I have to have a negative outcome to make me change paths, and I listen to that. And now that, I'm a little older and wiser, I actually use that to my advantage, and I'm able to recognize it much, much earlier than I did back then.
That's awesome, man. Ultimate Fighter season 4. Tell me about that experience.
Yeah, that was a tough time too, man. In my life, my wife was pregnant on bed rest. I had my largest promotion that I ever hung my ass out on. It's a few 100,000. I was doing a big show. It was the first ever show, mixed martial arts event in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. The boxing commission and the AG were trying to shut me down while I was on the show. You know what I'm saying? So it was really challenging. And then experience itself was really good. I wish the outcome would have went a little bit differently. Shoney Carter, he's a really wise dude. He knows what the hell he was doing, and they didn't play any of this, which kind of aggravated me a little bit. But we were I was the very first fight of the show, and we got all new supplies, shampoo and stuff. This dude used a whole bottle cocoa butt. Like your grandmom had it in your house,
Yeah,
that cocoa butter bottle that's like
yeah.
this big. So the
32
dude
ounce pump
walks
top.
out in my fight with a sauna suit on, right? And then I go in his room afterwards because the dude had like jelly on, right? Like while I was fighting him, and there's a half a bottle of hope. That stuff lasts like 10 years. You know what I'm saying? But he was just a cheating bastard, And then I trained with him afterwards, and I'm catching him left and right training. I was so pissed, but I mean, and the fight went the way it went, and it was a decision. Really should have been a draw. I thought we should have got another round out of it, but so be it. But it was an experience. I'll tell you. I'm glad that I got to do that, and just another chapter in the storybook, man.
Right on. I'd like to highlight a few of your UFC fights. I wish we had time to talk about all 69 of your fights, but I'd like to talk about a few of them. Your first UFC win, Ross Pointon. How was the feeling of getting that first UFC win?
Yeah, it was crucial for me, man. You know what I'm saying? And it was such a good fight too, because it almost looked easy. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? I don't think I even got hit once or twice. I just totally played him. He's a very emotional guy, so he was easy to manipulate with
Mhm.
that. And man, it was such a reassuring experience for me, because if you lose, and it's so tough, right? The highs are the highs, the lows are the lows.
Mhm.
Everybody says the same thing, but it's like to finally feel what that was on that stage, man, just felt
Yeah.
awesome. It was something I needed at the time. So
Hell yeah, man. Um, you fought a guy who's no longer with us. Rest in peace, Rumble. Tell us about fighting Anthony Rumble Johnson.
yeah, that was probably one of my biggest issues that I had was really myself. So in other words, like I truly love to fight. Like
Mhm.
and if you watch some of my fight, I'm smack talking,
Mhm.
I love that type of competition. I love that type of intensity.
Mhm.
And if you call me, I'm gonna say yes, I was my own worst enemy sometimes. Like I didn't make good business decisions, right? Because I just like to fight, and of course, like people are like, oh, this guy's cocky, like he shouldn't act like that. He's not undefeated. I'll tell you, anybody who really does this, who's really that type of competitor, you
Mhm.
always feel you're going to win. And it doesn't
Yeah.
matter who you're fighting. If not,
Yeah.
you're really in the wrong business. You really
Yeah.
are. Or you're just fighting for the wrong reasons. It's not really a reflection of you as an individual. It's
Mhm.
you're doing it for money or fame, who knows, right?
Right.
I fought because I really like to fight, right? So, I get a call, hey man, nobody wants to fight this undefeated new cat, and I beat a lot of guys who are undefeated, so the guys who are maybe a little bit newer don't have that kind of experience, and
Right.
at that time I was known to be rather salty, right? Like one thing, I might not be an expert at anything, but I was really good at taking fights, or poking holes in people's games. Like that was kind of my strategy,
Mhm.
and I get called up to fight him, and that was another fight that kind of worked out in my favor. So that's still probably one of my most honorable and impressive wins. Guy's a tough guy, knocks a lot of people out. I've never been knocked out, so right there makes for a good matchup. But yeah, man, that was another great experience, and I was living on cloud nine for a while after that, man. Especially after he started doing good and giving guys like Daniel Cormier a run for his money and stuff during his fights and stuff. So just and such a great dude too, man. Right, like you said,
Mhm.
rest in peace, the guy really had a good soul, man. And you hate for people like that to leave too early. But man, he's just a good individual.
Yeah. That seems to be what everybody says. Um, UFC 79. I believe it was a liver punch from Melvin.
Liver punch,
Was it a body shot?
not for to me.
Yeah. What happened in that fight? Do I have it down wrong?
What's that?
What happened with the Melvin fight?
No, no. I wound up choking his ass out. I think right at the end of the first period. So, and what's funny is that we're actually been talking a little bit lately. It's when we talk about this experience, and you'll hear guys. I think I heard Chandler talk about something fairly recently. It's kind of similar, but these guys are connected to your life, man, and it's
Yeah,
like you have to understand that, like, when you get ready for like a big UFC fight, or whether it's Pride or K1 or whatever, you live and breathe this individual.
yeah,
You watch him time after time. You look for his tendencies. You look for how his eyes change when he gets hit. Does his face change when he gets hit with leg kicks? How's he when he responds to getting taken down numerous times in a row? Like, you study all these things about
right,
an individual, right? So it's like they're connected to you forever. Now, obviously, during that conflict, there's I mean, I'm looking to hurt him. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I want to be victorious at all costs,
hmm,
and I've heard other people say it's like, man, he's trying to do massive harm to me. Like, I have to bring the
sure,
same type of energy back to him. But we had gotten to, I guess the big issue was that, like, and a lot of people aren't aware of this, but I did a large promotion down south for a long time called No Love. It was called Reality Combat first when I bought it off of Chad Robichaux. Some of you guys might see him. A Republican, speaks on behalf of the military guys. Like, to love that guy's big
okay,
jiu-jitsu gym in the Woodlands in Texas. Fought as well, but I wound up buying his promotion off of him, and then I expanded it in a much greater capacity. Did a lot of casino shows, and then I changed to take advantage of my branding to No Love Entertainment. And I think at the end of the day, I've done almost probably like 99 promotional shows. So most of the guys that came from the South, Sean Jordan, Kyle Bradley, Tim Crater, Dustin Poirier, Melvin Gilliard, Alan Belcher, all these guys kind of ran through my promotion, and I helped them, get experience and do that. So
hmm,
Melvin was kind of the same way. And then I think when he got in the UFC, especially on the Ultimate Fighter, he started really, saying he was the best, like, 155 pounder in the South. And, like, we all knew it was me at the time, but he's trying to brand himself and stuff.
yeah,
So there started being a lot of conflict between both of us because of that. And then there was a local show that, he swung on me when I stuck my hand out. And it's about the probably the most aggressive 30 seconds anyone's ever experienced. I mean, we're just tumbleweeding all between state police and stuff like that. And it was funny because he came up to me he came up to me at a UFC fight. Kyle Bradley, who was one of my guys I was managing at the time, he was fighting, and it's probably one of my favorite things that ever happened in my life, right? Because Melvin was standing in line to cash out his chips. I was behind him and had another individual behind me, right? So Melvin turns around and says, "Hey, look, man," and this was after he sucker punched me, right? He said, "Look, man, I want to apologize. I never really meant to do that," and blah, blah, blah. So I said, "Look," I said, "I appreciate your apology." I said, "But I also want to be forthcoming." And I said, "Every single time I talk to Joe Silva, every time, I take every single fight. I take the Anthony Johnsons. I take the last minute Terry Edom fight, right? I take all of those fights. And every time I take one, I say, please let me fight Melvin next." Every single time, right? Melvin was just kind of dropped there. And I said, "Look, because it's going to be okay with me when I embarrass you in front of like millions and millions and millions of people." And I said, "That's when you could shake your hand back out to me and we'll have a better day," right? And then, like, he was so just taken, he didn't know really how to respond to that type of
right.
dialogue. And what's funny is the guy standing behind me was Suge Knight, and he was like,
Oh my God.
"Yo, bro," he's like, "That's some gangster shit right there." So I'm like, "Hey, you ain't gangster till you have Suge Knight tell you you're fucking gangster." So that's like some props I still tell today. I'm like,
That's
"Hey,
an awesome
I got
moment.
street cred,"
Yeah, absolutely. That's an amazing story. UFC 83 Sam Stout. Tell me about fighting Sam. He's one of my favorite all-time UFC lightweights.
Yeah, man. And what a fun fight, huh? Too, like, that was the very first Canada UFC ever. And what's wild is that they were actually getting ready to have to move the whole event last minute. The Canadians were competing for the Stanley Cup. It was the last game. I think they were tied up or something like that, or the game before. They were, whoever wins out, if the other team would have won, then then they would have had to have another game. If the Canadians won, then they were the champions. And the Canadians wound up winning. Still one of my favorite pieces of memorabilia to date. The GM of the Canadians came in, gave us all customized hockey jerseys with our names on it.
Nice.
I love it, man. It's actually hanging up in my son's room right now. Yeah, that was a fun fight, and I always love playing the villain too. Oh my god, me and Matt Serra were booed so badly on that card, but I love it. I mean, that energy, right? Like, whether it's good or whether it's bad, it's still energy, right? So it's like, I was booed by everybody. So, and that was a great fight too. A lot of people, I think, didn't respect my stand-up at the time, or might have just thought I was kind of a grappler. So to really, stand and bag with someone of Sam's caliber, and win a close decision on that. And it was a very technical fight too. That's what's kind of tough sometimes. You'll fight a guy that's kind of sloppy or wild, and it's really hard to fight a guy like that and be super technical. But Sam is very, very technical, allowed me to be technical, and it was just a really, really pretty fight. It was one of those, and again, that was another victory. That was just a great to experience. And what's awesome, a lot of people don't know this either, is that when I was on the Ultimate Fighter, everyone that was on the Veterans Edition had a very unique contract. So my contract, I basically got my contract doubled per every win. So, like, at this point, I was on a multi-fight win streak with the UFC. So you can imagine, right? Like, okay, I get win bonus, and then because of that, it doubled from last time, and then it doubles again from that time, right? So there was that was great for revenue, but it also put my head on the chopping block too, because at the time I got released from the UFC, I was the highest paid lightweight in the division.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. You mentioned him a second ago, Terry Edom, late replacement. How'd that fight go?
Yeah. So again, good fight. I remember. So you're making me really dig back too. I'm like, man, that's some long time ago on some of this, right? But Terry's a tough dude, and I remember. I came back to my corner after the first round, and he banged me up a little bit. He's super long, and a lot of those European kickboxers, especially the guys from Russia, they all fight going backwards really, really well, specifically the long, lanky guys. And I struggle with that a little bit. I like to kind of sit in the pocket and mix up my takedowns and stuff like that, right? So so I came back in the first period, and Tim Crater was in my corner. I had a few of my other guys in the corner too. And they're like, Rich, and they're trying to bark all this stuff to me, all this instructions. I'm like, just shut the fuck up. I'm like, I know what I need to do. And then I just changed up the fight a little bit. But what really sucked on that is that I had a Von Flute choke on Terry Edom, and the ref had no idea what type of choke that was. Yeah. So he stood me up out of a Von Flute choke. Like, the guy's gargling, and I get stood up out of a Von Flute choke. Oh, man, I mean, it's like, come on, man. I mean, I was so upset, and that's like, finishing bonuses, things of that nature, so, but he was a tough dude. And then, right, like, how crazy is his story? You ever hear what happened to him?
I remember a few years ago seeing some footage involving kind of a freak out on a bus or something.
Man, like jump through I guess it was after that nasty knockout that it's tough, that's what people don't understand. And I'll tell you, I promised that I would never be that guy, but I have seen a lot of people that their identity is this sport. Right. Yeah. And I always looked at it different, because the way I looked at it is that I am a reflection of the sport. The sport's not a reflection of necessarily who I'm trying to be, right? It's just,
Sure.
it's a stage, it's a platform for me to show my character, right? And
Exactly.
I think when some of these guys, they get involved, or they get so hyper focused that they have nothing else, or that's it or nothing,
Right.
that when that deck of cards crumbles, it's their identity that goes
Sure.
along with it. And I mean,
Right.
and especially if it's something that's highlight worthy, where, with Terry's, I mean, golly, how many, I mean, I could probably say I've seen him with that a spinning heel kick probably 1,000 times, if I'm not,
It's
I
Steve
mean,
Barbosa.
it's still on every highlight reel, right?
Yeah.
So I think he may have struggled with that, but yeah, I mean, that was crazy. But from what I heard, I think he's back in the sport, and training guys and stuff like that. So I'm happy for him for that.
Yeah, that's great to hear. After the bus incident, shortly after that, I remember reading that he was doing better, but that it's been years since I heard anything else. That's great to hear that he's doing better, and that he's still involved in the sport.
Yeah.
Um, After your UFC run ended, you went to fight for Bellator and some other independent shows. Tell me about that. Did it bother you not being in the UFC anymore? Did you care about what promotion you fought for?
Yeah, so I think it did bother me for a minute. I'm not going to lie, right? Because no one wanted to fight Gray Maynard, right? I think at the time he was ranked like anywhere between 5 and 3,
Mm-hmm.
and no one wanted to fight him. And again, you call me, what's I answer? Yes,
Yeah.
And I thought I could catch him. It was just stylistically a really bad matchup. It was a
Yeah.
super boring fight. He threw one punch and then took me down. I had an open guard. I mean, I was slinging stuff left and right, but he was just staying on top of me. Wasn't
Yeah.
trying to pass. Didn't give me a lot of opportunity. And my fault. I mean, I couldn't catch him, right? So, but what happened was, and again, you have to remember, I was the highest paid lightweight at this time.
Mm-hmm.
When they seen that I had a trouble with that style, they literally turned around and gave me Gleason to bow, which
Yeah.
is like a souped up version of Gray Maynard, right? Because not
Sure.
only does he have almost equivalent wrestling skills, he's just as big, if not bigger. And that was kind of one of my advantages. So you took that away from me. And then, obviously his submission skills. I mean, he's a fantastic black belt.
Yeah.
So they literally, when they seen I had trouble with one certain fighting style,
Mm-hmm.
they came back and gave me the same exact guy again. And, 2 fights in a row. And what sucks is that I think I was coming off like a 6 or 7 fight win streak. So it's like, man, getting cut, fighting, and Gleason was ranked like number 6 or 5 in the world at that time,
Sure.
So it was just it's just business, right? It's no different than football. It's no different than any other professional sport. I mean, you're
Sure.
just cattle, and it's a business, right? So I mean, I get it, but unfortunately, you take the good with the good, the bad with the bad. But after that, I really didn't care because I fought for so long, so prior to UFC. It was almost kind of refreshing because I got to just kind of make my own connections. I was on a reality show out in Ireland, and I made a lifelong friend out there, and a guy named Tom Smith who works with Grant Cardone's team at 10X right now, and some things are coming from that right now that we're working on. So, it was. Don't get me wrong. I mean, the UFC is the pinnacle, and anybody that says, it doesn't matter, they're just lying,
Right.
But Bellator treated me really good. That was a great experience. But just to be honest, that at this time in my career, my body was really, really starting to break down bad. It seemed like every single fight, I was dealing with something different, and that was really tough for me.
Gotcha. When did you officially retire, and were injuries the main factor?
Oh, absolutely. So, my last fights were in Bellator, and I literally, when I fought our what was his name, Cernovsky, he was undefeated kickboxing from Russia. I literally stepped on the scale and flexed and popped both ribs off of both sides of my sternums. At the end of my fight career, I constantly had rib issues. And, it's tough to wrestle a guy when you don't have that kind of core strength.
Sure.
So it wasn't the most exciting fight. I still want to pull in a W off that. But then, I fought Marcin Held. My ankles are just complete. Even today, like, I'm considering doing a PNS system, peripheral nerve stimulator, on my ankles just from kicking. I was one of those guys that, if you check me, I would just kick you again just to prove that, like, your check doesn't matter, just being dumb. But I have a lot of ankle issues, and as soon as Marcin bit on my ankle, dislocated at the socket when I was fighting him, and then my very last fight against Tortellini or close to something like that on his name, I forget it, but anyway, my ribs popped again while like very first exchange in the fight, and I actually fought the whole fight clamshell. I didn't even care about getting hit in the face. It was just like, hey, I can't afford to get hit in the body. And again, like, my mobility was taken away. My wrestling, I didn't have my strength and stuff, and lost that fight in the decision as well. And it was just like my good buddy Josh Rafferty. I remember us sitting on the couch afterwards, and it's like, man, and he's like my brother. He went to all my fights with me and stuff. He was good friends with Rich Franklin on one of the seasons of the Ultimate Fighter, the very first one. And I just told Josh, I was like, man, I can't allow this sport for people to see me lose and think that's who I am inside, because it's not. And even though I was feeling mentally stronger than I ever was, my body's just running at such a deep deficit. I just really struggled. I had trouble running. I had trouble cutting weight. Everything was so difficult. It was not coming easy. So I just said, I just looked at him and I was like, hey, man, I'm just going to take my same attitude, the same Rich Clementi, and I'm going to move it to another arena, and that's really what I did.
Okay. In spite of your injuries, you're a veteran of 69 pro fights. That's more than a lot of guys will ever get close to. What would you attribute, I guess, your durability to?
Yeah, and then I have about 15 Muay Thai on top of that, and probably another 200 submission grappling matches. I just love to compete. I feel like without that type of excitement, without being challenged as a male, right? I feel empty in life, And I'll tell you, I am very grateful for the arena that I entered in right afterwards. I started right when I retired. I got into medical sales with one of my good buddies, Travis McCoy, exposed it to me. He's one of my students and very successful in medical sales, and had an opportunity to learn from him a little bit. And now I'm my next competitors are the top 3 companies in my space right now. So we're going through a national expansion.
Awesome.
I'm very aggressive in business. I take the same type of strategies, look for weakness. I look for holes in what they do. I look for my advantages, what I do well. So again, I just take the same guy and I just moved him to a different arena. And, I hate one thing that bugs me, man. And I feel so bad for guys that don't understand that correlation, and they feel they got to hang on for so long and not afraid to they're afraid to start a whole new chapter, because it's uncomfortable. And you would think these same type of guys are guys used to being uncomfortable, but they're really not. And those are the guys that, like I said, that I think they kind of get involved for this sport for really the wrong reasons, And those are the guys I think that struggle once the chapter closes, and it always does, right? Father Time always wins. He's undefeated. Undefeated, king of the world.
Yeah, I went through your whole MMA fight record, and not everybody that watches this channel is a diehard fan like me, or can name where GSP's dad went to high school. But I wanted to name off notable fighters that you've faced, people that casual fans might recognize the name of, because it is one of the most impressive lists I've ever seen, and I believe you're my 24th or 25th interview, so that's saying something. These are some guys that you faced: Charles Crazy Horse Bennett, Pete Spratt, Eve Edwards, Marcus Aurelio, Eddie Yagan, Ryan Schultz, Carl Uno, Dean Thomas, Ross Poynton, Ron Carnero, Anthony Rumble Johnson, Melvin Gillard, Sam Stout, Terry Edom, Gray Maynard, Gleason Tebow, Quinn Mulhern, Reza Madadi, Shinya Aoki, Chris Clements, Derek Campos, Alexander Sarnovsky, and Marcin Held. That's just the notable guys. That's impressive, man.
Yeah, I think any one of those guys with the right opponent could beat a world champ on a given day, man. To be honest,
Absolutely. And there's more guys on your record that are in that same boat. I just didn't think people would recognize them. I want to ask you some pick one and why questions. I'm going to give you a couple options, and if you don't mind, tell me your choice and how come. Pulled pork or brisket?
Pulled pork, because it's juicy and you got to throw some coleslaw on top of it.
And it's versatile too. You can do anything with it.
100%.
If you're ever in Fayetteville, Arkansas, man, get a hold of me. When I'm not interviewing badasses in my free time, I smoke world championship winning brisket and pork all day long.
That's awesome. I'm not too shabby myself, actually. We shot a pig here in Louisiana. They're a nuisance critter here, so you can basically hunt them any time of year. And it was funny, the first time I did, we quartered one, and I was like, you know what? I said, I have a banana tree. We wrapped it all in banana leaves, and I buried it at night. And I was like, man, it's either going to be really, really good the next day, or it's going to turn out like shit, And good enough. I mean, it was just outstanding. So I play around. I love to cook myself.
Awesome, man. All right. Muhammad Ali or Mike Tyson, both in their prime?
I love Mike Tyson, bro. He's just my type of guy. He's ferocious. He doesn't care. He'll bite your nose off. He'll bite your ear off, right?
He'll eat your children.
What's that?
He'll eat your children.
Yeah, I'll leave that out, But to me, and don't get me wrong, I love the finesse of the guys that can be like the Bruce Lees and just the sniper, strategical. Like I love that, but I love the brutal hostility too, and I wish I hate that specifically, and I could go on a rant on this, so I'm not going to do that, but it's like specifically with like kids sports, like football, like all of that's getting stripped away. And a lot of those kids, I feel bad if they ever have to dip into that as a man, right? Like whether we go to war as a country, or your family ever gets a situation where as a man you have to step up and be that guy, because most 98% of men in America don't know how to be that guy. They don't even know if he exists, So I love that type of fighter.
Awesome. Okay. Saints or LSU Tigers?
I'm going with the Saints, man. You just, the dome. You gotta love the dome. And I'm from New Jersey, East Coast. Like college football is not that big of a thing. I think if I lived down here, I would probably say LSU. But the Superdome and the fans, man, it's like a huge experience. And so I'm going with the Saints. And hey, congrats to them today. They whooped some ass. Did you see that? I think it's like 42-10 or something like that.
I have literally watched no sports today except fights of yours.
No, that's funny. Yeah, they did well, which they don't normally do. So props to them.
All right. George St. Pierre or Anderson Silva?
That's a tough one. Both fight fairly similar. And again, I'm not really that fighting style. I mean, don't get me wrong, super impressed with them as competitors. I would probably say St. Pierre just because of his dedication to himself as an athlete. He stopped by in the Ultimate Fighter for a minute while we were there. We didn't have any set coaches like all the other seasons. We just had guys kind of stop by and bring value. And, he talked about, which I talk to my kids about a lot, actually, kind of same philosophy, but, training and doing like basketball and swimming, just always doing active things, and how much more your body gets out of, doing other activities, balancing your muscles out, using muscles you don't maybe normally do, because they're so fight eccentric with just kind of the fighting specific training. So, I was very impressed by his overall approach as an athlete.
Absolutely, yeah. One of the most scientific guys ever. All right, coffee or energy drinks?
Oh, I'm going with 4D energy drinks, baby. We're getting a plug on that. There's a guy here in Louisiana. He actually sponsors my son. My son's getting ready to go out to D1 school out in California, a CBU. I'm so excited for his journey next year. But there's a company out here, 4D. They take all your amino acids and they put it in a daily energy drink for you. So I have one a day every day.
Awesome.
Yep.
TV shows or video games?
Oh, video games all day long, dude. And if it doesn't have a gun, I'm not playing it. So I'm a huge gamer. Like I am on Call of Duty all the time. Like it's the way I decompress, man. At work, I have a lot of like stressful conversations. I put the headphones on and just zone out, man. It's like my relaxing place.
Do you and Jens ever get together and play online?
No, but me and Jens do. We're lucky that his son is a high school wrestler as well. So we get to bump into each other at every national big tournament. We were out at Iowa Nationals last year, and we ran into each other. Got to spend some time together. He got to watch both of my sons as well. So Jen's a good dude, man, and that's actually why I originally got sponsored. Managed by Monty, was with the idea that I could be a really great training partner for Jens, and that's how we got to kind of meet. And he was really my first introduction to Militich fighting systems.
That's a serious introduction.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, you mentioned him earlier. Bruce Lee or Chuck Norris?
Dude, I'm going with Chuck Norris, man, because no matter what he goes against, he always wins. Don't you hear the slogans and stuff, right? Like, how can you not? Like, I might get kicked if I say Bruce Lee and don't say Chuck Norris. He's just you got to pick Chuck Norris.
I used to have a shirt that says, "Is it a coincidence that World War II ended on the same day that Chuck Norris was born?" I don't think so.
Yeah, I seen that one actually.
All right, your favorite way to finish a fight, KO or submission?
Man, it would probably be a jump knee or a head kick, to be honest. So we're gonna go with KO.
Awesome. All right, it's your birthday, and there's a stage in the backyard, and you can have anybody in the world up there playing "Happy Birthday" to you. Who's it going to be?
Oh, that's a tough one, man. I might go with Red Hot Chili Peppers, man. I've been a fan of mine since I've been a little kid, dude. That we're going with Red Hots, man.
I can picture Anthony Kiedis singing "Happy Birthday" and Flea beating on the bass. Yeah, I can picture that.
No doubt.
All right. Tell me a little bit about the Gladiator Gym in Slidell.
Yeah, so I've had fight gyms ever since I started with the sport, and that was really kind of to support my own training partners, to be honest, because there was nobody doing anything down south here, right? So like I had to create a gym, I had to create a culture. I actually used to do a local fighting show that really I stole the idea from Monty, but he called his like Thursday night fights or Tuesday night fights, and I made a show called Whoop Ass Wednesday. And what I used to do is guys that signed up, if I thought they were tough, I came and talked to them afterwards. So we built a pretty large fight team down here. But as my career started coming to an end, and I was trying to help other guys out, this is a really funny sport when it comes to management and friendships and things like that. And I really don't see a lot of them last. And, that's one thing I'm very appreciative about Monty, about me and that dude always just had a handshake deal, and, he got paid when he's supposed to get paid. I kept my word, and, I was loyal to him. And you have to understand, right? Like at the when things are going really well for me in the UFC, I'm getting approached by all these guys and stuff. And I just got to the point, I got tired of getting my feelings hurt. I'm canceling, family vacations for guys. They're so unappreciative. I mean, I'm not going to go into details on some of the specifics, but, I don't think I've ever received one penny from any one of the guys that I train, no matter, if I brought them with me to the UFCs, if I did introductions, if I got them their first fight. And, for them to not value that and then later on the road take a different direction once they're successful, it's like, hey, man, go about your way. So I just got to a point where I decided that the real influence was with the children. And once my younger son started, my older son now, but when he was little, he started competing. I was like, man, if I can help make my kid this good, I know I can help other kids along the way. Yeah. So that's where we kind of shifted. We pivoted to just focusing on the wrestling program, because as much as my kids like jiu-jitsu, and my little guy, he's actually super nasty at boxing. He's had 2 MMA fights already without really training MMA, but I was like, hey man, these kids could get college scholarships, and I could make such a big difference in their lives. So that's where we started focus on the Gladiators gym. And, I think I've been teaching youth wrestling for probably almost maybe 8 years or so, 8 or 9 years.
Wow. Yeah, everyone I talked to told me to ask about your children and wrestling. The adjectives used to describe them were phenomenal, phenoms, amazing, future world champions. Tell me some more about your kids.
Yeah, man. I probably, it's funny because me and my wife just had an argument about this last night. She's a phenomenal mother and she does what mothers do. And I'm a phenomenal father and I do what fathers do. Right. And I really push my children. I challenge them in a time period where you just don't see that a lot. And that's why I still have the youth gym. I mean, if you only understood what my daily schedule's like and the fact that I commit my time to this program, it shows how committed I am to making an impact in youth today, because it's lacking. All the problems that we have stem from lack of direction at a young age. I really believe that. I mean, that's where I believe in my heart anyway. But yeah, man, both of my boys, they're dedicated. I mean, my oldest son, like I said, he gets ready to leave next year, and just so you know his schedule, so he leaves my house at 5 a.m. in the morning, picks up a few kids, drives to a private school about 40 minutes away, does morning practice, goes to school all day, has straight A's and B's. Then he trains at night, usually comes back to my gym to bring a little bit of value because all the kids love him. And then 2 days ago, he then goes to the youth program over at the church. He's there till 9:30 at night, gets home at 10, and then does it all over again. And you know what I'm saying? So the level of expectation that they have for excellence. And it's funny because we went over and there's this wrestling program at a high school that they really don't. I mean, I don't know how to say it without being mean, but they really don't have that great of a program. And we went over there to try to help them out, And it was funny because I told the kids, I was like, who really knows what it takes to be successful? And, they're kind of going around telling different things. And I said, well, it's not your fault if you don't know how to be successful because no one's told you yet. Right. So I said, so here's the deal, Richie, go down your list of what your week looks like. And the very first thing he goes is, he's very wise for a 17-year-old, but he goes, who's up at 4:45 in the morning? And all the other kids looked around. He's like, I'm already training by 5, and I'm like, he's got you beat. You're already at a deficit, So, but again, man, I just have a high level of accountability. I'm not afraid to squeeze my kids, and they know that, and they know, again, if you're going to squeeze hard, you got to have a lot of love at the same token, right? So it's like I love hard. I squeeze hard, and at the end of the day, I'm going to be able to push them. But both of those things, you have to have good balance, or it doesn't really work. But yeah, man, I'm very blessed, and again, I mean, my oldest one, he'll he'll wrestle. He's a real smoozy business guy. He talks to everybody. Everybody knows him, loves him. But my youngest guy, I mean, I really wouldn't be surprised if we see him in combative sports, to be honest. He's super nasty. I mean, he just broke his football helmet last week. I mean, he's like that guy, So he really is a reflection of that part of my personality, to be honest. My oldest one, not so much, but my youngest guy definitely has that.
That's awesome. I told you before the interview, I reached out to some guys that you trained with at Militich and Monty. I wanted to get some background on maybe some stories that you might not think right off the top of your head.
Yeah, that goes.
If I say so, I'm not going to give a detailed thing. I'm just going to say a few words that they thought would bring spark a memory. If it's something that's not okay to talk about, just say next.
I'm an open book, man. Again, I think that if my experiences or challenges or even who I was back then, because I'm not that guy anymore. So there's really nothing that I would be afraid to discuss because one, I've taken acceptance for the wrongs that I do in my life, but two, somebody can also relate that if they're living in that position, if they're doing certain things or whatever, right. No matter what hole they may be in, what type of darkness, I've climbed out, man. So if I can do it and share that, no matter, some people watching might be like, whoa, like that dude did that. Wow. If it helps somebody, one person, that's all I care about, man.
Awesome. All right. Spencer Fisher is one of the guys I talked to this afternoon. He said, first of all, when you were single, you were a hell of a ladies' man.
I figured you were going to know that.
This is Spencer talking, not me.
Yeah.
He also told me to ask you about a time that he and you were at the club with Dan Henderson.
Man, I don't
put some drinks on Dan's tab.
I'm sure. Hey, if he says it, I mean, and who knows if I was drinking, who knows what type of shape I was in, right? So, but Dan,
and didn't know how he got to the room and had to apologize to Dan. And you put all the drinks on Dan's tab.
I think he made that story up, and he probably did it and tried to blame me for it. That's what I think. So
there we go. That sounds about right.
Oh man, I mean, I'm telling you, I mean, I used to piss fire, man. I mean, I had no filter in any part of my life for a long time,
Wow,
and that's dangerous. I ripped through a lot of relationships because of that. And now that I look back, luckily I had children later on in my life because I would really regret being the father to them at that time period. So, especially now I have a little girl, like I am exactly who I hope she sees value. I hope she, as she grows up, puts the bar on what daddy does. Because if that's going to be the case, I'm going to be okay with whoever she meets later in her life.
That's what I'm going for too, man. Okay. I talked to Monty and he gave me a couple stories. One involved a torn ACL, the break between round 2 and 3, and Monty getting a peek at the scorecards.
Yeah, so I had I was fighting. There was a great promotion called, unless you're a fight fan, you don't know about this, but there was a fight promotion called Euphoria, I think it was, and they did it USA versus Russia. They did USA versus the world. They had they had some amazing matchups, and there was a lightweight tournament. I was in it. Hermes Franco was in it. Katani was in it. Eve Edwards was in it. It was really challenging, and I fought this Japanese guy, and I was on top, and he kind of did an Eddie Bravo lockup on me on my leg, and I had staph infection. Like, it was so bad, and I was still like, I'm just gonna fight. I'm gonna slip it through the athletic commission, But what I didn't know is that when you have staph like that, it puts a lot of inflammation in your joints. And when he did that lockdown on my leg, I just heard everything like pop, 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 and I'm shit. Now I'm on top of him, so I'm like, oh, I never had an injury like that. So I was like, okay, what's that? And then I went to kick, and my leg just completely like just spun around. It rotated. My knee did, and so I fell on the ground. And what's funny, the commentators are like, oh, I guess Rich just wants to work his guard, right? So I came back in the second period. I was like, man, Monty, I was like, my knee's pretty messed up, you know? And he's like, oh, okay, no problem, you know, just kind of going there. And then like I really was like, look, I was like, Monty, like it's bad, you know. And he went around and looked at all the scorecards before the third round, and he's like, look, Rich, he's like, you won all the, you won, and this happened like within the first minute of the fight, and he's like, you're ahead on all the scorecards. He's like, just ride it out, you know. So went out there, I fell down a few more times, and then I was out for 6 months. It was actually one of the more depressing times of my life, to be honest. The recovery was very long for me. It was like a total like 6 months, man. So that was super, super tough. Hold on, I gotta get rid of that. So but yeah, I do appreciate Monty giving me that type of info, because I might not have had the same confidence going out there.
You might have heard it worse too.
That was nothing to hurt worse. Everything was torn in it. Every ligament was torn in my knee. Yeah, there was no hurting it worse. It just is what it is.
I can't imagine that. I've got torn meniscus in both knees, really bad in my left one, and just walking around in daily life is rough. So I can't imagine everything gone.
Yeah, well, you know, fighting is a weird thing, man. Like when I fought Eve Edwards, I had a nail that went into my shin. And it was like very, very sensitive. I don't know if it was like right on a nerve. But what's funny, you know, he's a great kicker. And I still had good mobility the whole fight. But I guess he hit that cut or something like that, because as soon as I walked out of the cage, my whole leg blew up like I had a lymph node issue, like all the way down to my calf and my knee were the same side as my hamstring. But it didn't happen till I took like 2 steps out of the cage. So when you talk about adrenaline and stuff like that, it's like it's super, super crazy, man, how the human body works like that.
The other thing Monty mentioned was he said I might be interested in hearing about the tag team match in Japan with Jeff Curran.
Yeah. So I believe no one's challenged this yet, but I was the very first American to ever fight in a tag team match. And and we fought. It was a promotion called Zest. I love that promotion. Like that was such an amazing experience. It really favored kind of the grappler style, specifically like guys like Aoki, not Aoki, but Imanari came from that. There was a lot of really good leg lockers because you couldn't punch them to the face on the ground, so they weren't really scared to just like flip and dive underneath you and stuff like that. So you could punch standing up, but just when you're on the ground, you can punch the body, but just not the face. And so right, Jeff's my partner. We're fighting the Katani brothers, and one fought in the UFC a few times actually. So I'm going out there and I'm fighting, you know, having a good time, and I'm like, okay, let me try this tag stuff. So I tagged Jeff in. And what I didn't really realize is that the very first kick that he blocked, he wound up breaking his arm. And I didn't know because I was kind of looking the other way, right? Like I didn't see him grimace or anything. So like he goes to like tag me back out, and I'm like, wait, like go fight. Like we're getting paid the same, right? Like go, earn your pay, bud, you know? So I go back out there and I'm fighting now, blah, 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 having a good time. And I go to tag Jeff and he doesn't want to tag back in. And I'm like, what the shit is this? Like, I'm getting worked by my own teammate here, right? Did he get slipped some money in the background or something? You know. So anyway, he goes and he still didn't tell me what was going on. So he goes out there and hops the guard and gets leg locked instantly. And so then it's just me versus these two guys. And they were very smart because I would get on top of them. And then, they would, if there wasn't like a lot of action, they really promoted a lot of busy groundwork. You would get stood up. And every stand up, they get to trade out. So they just wore my ass down. It was like 14 minutes of just them tagging out. And, I had a new fresh guy every 20 seconds. I felt like I was back in the gym. But it did do a lot of good for me. I wound up getting, I think I got caught in a submission, actually, a leg lock, maybe. I don't know. I don't remember. But anyway, that did a lot. It was really beneficial for me because after that fight, I told myself, I said, I will never worry about getting tired fighting one human being for the rest of my life. And it allowed me actually to be much more aggressive and not worry about, because fighters do that, right? Like, I mean, I used to anyway. I was like, man, do I want to save a little bit for the second or third round, And that made me get rid of that thought. And then one of my most memorable events that ever happened while I was fighting. So I was so pissed off because when they won, the better Katani was using kind of that win over me to get in the UFC, and in all like the magazines and stuff, he's doing interviews how he beat Rich Clementi and blah blah blah. And I'm like, dude, first of all, it was like you and your brother at the same time, right? So when we did the big Zest 16-man tournament, which is a phenomenal tournament, like anybody wants to go back and get that old VHS or whatever the hell it's on nowadays, it's just outstanding. There was some really George Kurzel. There was some crazy Ukrainians in there, Imanari, Marcus Aurelio, Jason Maxwell. I mean, there was some really good guys in that tournament. And I told the promoter, I said, all I care is that I fight Katani. And I'll tell you, I beat the living shit out of that dude when we fought in the tournament. But what was cool is when I beat him, and the Japanese, I really love their culture. I really do. I mean, I think very highly of them for the most part. What's neat is and they were promoting him. That was like their guy, right? Mm-hmm. And when I beat him, they came back in my locker room, and I had blue gloves on when I fought him, and they gave me red gloves, and they said, we would like to apologize, and you now are our favorite fighter for the event. And they gave me red gloves, and the red is a very symbolic color for the Japanese and stuff, and I know what they were saying by that, and it was a very honorable moment in a sport that has turned out not to be so honorable nowadays.
Right. Okay. The last person I spoke to was the Massacre, Drew McFedries, one of my all-time favorite fighters.
Mine too, man, to be honest. I really like watching Drew fight.
About his punching power. I try and tell him that the way he throws punches and the way they connect is just, if you watch it, it's different than everybody else. It's not the same punch. And he argues with me, it's not speed, it's power. Then the next day, it's power. Anyway, he said that you are an amazing guy, that he loves today like a brother, and being around you in the gym gave him and everyone else energy.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, he actually stayed with me for a little while, man. He came down and we set up just like a lot of fighters do, right? Hey, here's a room set up on the floor, gym bag on the side, But man, I mean, that's a guy that just a lot of people don't know. And I'm telling you, I know they talk about punching power from different people. Just like you said, it's almost hard to explain. This dude would be able to like lock out his back and rotate his elbow up a little bit, and just everything was just so connected on his punch. And I mean, I hated sparring that dude. I mean, it was really different, just a lot of people don't know him. I think maybe if he had a little bit better direction around him, maybe he kind of came into the Militich program a little bit later. And it was very cliquey at that point. Again, I kind of was in the same boat as Drew was, but I'm always been kind of a loner anyway, just moving around as much like as the kid. So that didn't bother me, but I did feel like Drew was always like 1 degree of separation in that program and camp. And, I think that's a guy that is just a phenom, to be honest.
I agree 100%. he has the hardest hooks that look like the most effortless hooks I have ever seen. That's the best way I can describe Drew.
100%. 100%.
And he still argues with me that he doesn't throw that hard of punches. I'm like, Robbie Lawler is
Bullshit.
quoted as saying he was hit the hardest in his life by you. But okay, Drew.
100%.
All right, man. I only have a few more questions, and then I'll let you enjoy the rest of your night. What is the best advice you have ever received in your fight career?
Ooh. So it was indirectly given.
Okay.
And that was when I first went to Jens Pulver's house, and it was an apartment. And at the time, I don't think he had a car. And, he had 2 UFC belts, might even been 3. I don't remember really, but it was at least at a minimal 2 on these like particle board bookshelf. Right. And this is what I was inspiring for. And then I went over to Monty's house, and I seen the family, cars, I seen the nice house, I seen the stability, and indirectly in my mind, I said, I will never be that other guy. And meeting Jens, and don't get me wrong, like I have the utmost respect for Jens, but at the time specifically, there was no revenue in fighting. It just wasn't, And even through my career, there really wasn't. Like the 50,000 to get permanent brain damage, you know what I'm saying? And that's on the high end. I mean, I fought in shows coming up for $500. I'm like, hey, sign me up, So, but the trade off on that is when you talk about your brain and you talk about your spine, those are 2 things that are non-recoverable. Once the damage is done, it's done. And luckily for myself, I was never a sit in the pocket type guy and just exchange. Like I had pretty good defense and I had great head movement. But, and at the same token, some people, it's tough, man, because people ask like, Rich, well, if you know that and you see that now, how in the world can you let your kids follow the same path? And what's tough is because that trade-off is giving me what I have today, So, and that's something that you can't get in a lot of other arenas. Like there's something very special on the journey that only a few guys really do. And so I'm not talking to guys that have 4 fights and, retire after that and stuff. But I mean, this really deep lifestyle of doing this and being a gladiator for so long. Sure. There's a fight in me that, there's no business guy that's going to sit across the table and either 1, intimidate me, or 2, say he's going to be able to outwork me or outposition me. It's just not going to happen, Right. So that was that I always had other businesses. Like I had a promotional company, even to the point Dana White, they frowned upon me having my own promotion. I actually got sued by, not sued. I got a cease and desist by the UFC because I had an octagon shaped ring, and they had a copyright on that. And the funny thing is that I actually had an engineer go out and measure all the sides, and because 2 of the sides were not even, as far as I know, that doesn't make an octagon, does it?
Were they not even on purpose, or did you just luck out?
No, they were just a manufacturer. I mean, it's all equal sides is actually the term for an octagon. So even if they're off a quarter of an inch, it's not an octagon, So,
that's awesome.
So I always had other businesses because I never wanted to fight past the time I thought it was appropriate for me to do so, which I did already. I mean, I did that just naturally. I probably should have not had my last 5 or 6 fights, but any good competitor that truly likes doing this will always fight past his prime.
Absolutely, yeah. Everyone seems to. If you could have fought anyone in the UFC ever, as a dream fight, who would you have fought?
Ooh, that's a good.
It could be anybody. It could be Mighty Mouse. It could be Brock Lesnar, John Jones, anyone.
Yeah. I like the guys like Ferguson and stuff like that. Those are the guys I like to fight. Mm-hmm. I like to fight guys that bring a lot of energy, not just get out there and fight, but like the matter you make me, the
Mm-hmm.
funner of a fight it is. And that's why even one of my favorite fights to date is the guy Reza Mendati.
Yep.
I wanted headbutting him at weigh-ins, but he had the exact same energy I do. So it was like a tornado, two tornadoes hitting each other,
Yeah.
And I just love that. So really anybody that brings that type of style of fight to the table, I like that.
Awesome. Your favorite fighter to watch ever?
Kortanatov.
Who?
In Pride.
Okay.
So yeah. So I think he fought. Was it Marco Ruas maybe? Or no, it was Pedro. One of the Brazilians. Why am I forgetting his name? Not Pedro Sauer.
Pedro Hizzo?
Anyway, Pedro Israel. Yeah, exactly. So, but I remember him knocking him out one time, and as he's falling down, he like catches his hand in midair just to kick him in the face again. But he was a Russian. He was a Russian agent, and I mean his attitude. Like he's done interviews. He's like, man, this is just fun. He's like, I've killed people. He's like, this is no worry for me. You know what I'm saying? But just an extremely ferocious individual that and I think as we commercialize the sport, we've gotten away from that a little bit, but there was a time period of the sport where it was very ferocious, and they allowed headbutts and ground kicks, and even though I get it that you had to take that away to some extent to have a more marketable product that boxing commissioners would recognize, I still like that. Now I don't know how the hell slap boxing's legal, right? Like what type of brain damage is going to occur to that, but I do like that time period of fighting. That's very, very special. We'll probably never see it again. But I like guys of that era.
Okay. If you could have one mulligan in your fight career, one do-over, what would it be?
Man,
what's the one loss that bugs you the most when you think about it?
I really don't have any, man. I'm telling you, like, I know that sounds weird and maybe even cliche a little bit, but everything happens for a reason, man. There's nothing in my life that, like, seriously, like I sit here as I talk to you today, I tell you that I have zero regret for anything in my life because it is totally a piece of who I am today, bad and good. And my end zone or my landing spot where I am today contributes to every single little thing that's happened to this point. So.
Gotcha. Okay. Of the two Hollywood blockbusters that you starred in, which one did you enjoy making the most?
Yeah, so Philly Kid, Sean Connery. People that might not know the 007, right? So his son was a movie producer, and they were shooting a film here in New Orleans. They were giving really good tax credits for anybody coming in. It was like right after a storm, and they brought me in as to help with some of the talent, some of the fight scenes in that movie, and I'm like, hey man, can I read the script? I want to feel for what you're looking for. And I think it was like a movie Never Back Down or something like they did, but it's all these crazy like capoeira kicks and shit like that. Well, this movie was supposed to be kind of dark and realistic. And when I read the script, it was like the same fight choreographer that used to like Never Back Down. So I was like, man, this is horrible. Like, you're not going to get an end result. And I probably can't even cast this way that you want because I'm not going to feel a true connection to it. So he sat down and he's like, hey, look, well, why don't you tell me what this should look like? And I got to help rewrite some of the parts of the movie.
Awesome.
I casted all of the talent for it. I wrote every fight scene for the movie, and had to roll in it myself. But that was really neat because that allowed me to see a side of the business that a lot of people don't see, right? Like as far as directing and being in charge of cut scenes and sound and stuff like that. So I basically got involved enough to realize that the movie space is no part that I ever want to be part of long term. So I've done some stunt work and things like that in the past, but that was really special. And I got to, and then as they got confidence in me as a business person, they let me cast some of the other parts, and I was really brought into the fold. And the round table of people making decisions. So I got to really include a lot of people that I really love, that I'm good friends with. And they had to get a life-changing experience with being a part of something like that as well, too. So definitely that situation.
That's awesome, man.
And that's Philly Kid, by the way. That's the movie name.
Right. When can we see you in bare knuckle boxing?
Never, bro. Yeah, I love the sport, to be honest. Nate Shook, the matchmaker, good friend of mine. I love what the organization's doing. And if it probably would have been earlier on, I would have been all over that. The problem is now is that, I work a lot with pain management guys and things like that, interventional pain management, so procedural based pain management. But, my body only has X amount of miles left on it. And I am going to reserve those for my kids in my wrestling program and my own children. And to do anything else would be extremely selfish. I am very confident. And that's, I see these guys that are like 45 and 50 and, even guys who like ran through it and had very successful MMA careers, and they're doing bare knuckle boxing. And I'm like, man, like, do you need that exposure that badly? Like, I really think it's almost narcissistic in a way, right? And it's like, I am very confident of who I am, right? Like if I was to die tomorrow, like, hey, Rich left a good legacy, bunch of stories to tell, everybody's gonna have different things. I'll be like, whoa, hope they don't talk about that, but it's like it's not important to me. I have different goals. Right now it's about, look, God, family, legacy. That's all I care about, and the legacy isn't necessarily involved in hurting people anymore. My new legacy is helping people. So I'm really involved on that journey of my life.
Awesome. I was kind of being tongue in cheek with that question. And you said why when you started talking about 45-year-old guys doing bare knuckle boxing. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a little much. There's some of them. I love Houston Alexander to death. But man, I wish he'd quit bare knuckle boxing.
Yeah.
He's like 46, 47 now. Like, I do these interviews to try and help people who are struggling, try to inspire folks who are down. If you had a message to share with someone who is struggling right now watching this channel, what would that message be?
Yeah, I'd say specifically if the fighters were, it's like I deal with a lot of people, right? Like my age, right? You get to 45-ish. Everything that you thought you were kind of stripped away a little bit. The physicality's not there. The physical dominance that you're used to, and that's tough, right? But again, I think that if anyone's done it once, right? If anybody's been that guy any time in their life, all they have to do is decide that, the physical part of it is really just the dance, right? Like what exists inside of you, the creativity, the emotions, all of that is irrelevant to the physical side, to be honest. So, I really would like guys to know that, if they apply themselves, step out of their comfort zone and stuff, that they can be just as successful outside in the real world as they were in the ring as well.
Absolutely, man. What do you have going on in your day-to-day life other than medical sales, teaching the younger generation how to wrestle? What do you have going on?
Yeah, so I'm a managing founder of a company called Access Home Care Solutions. We have a few different divisions of that: Access Aesthetics, Access Health and Wellness. We just did a merger with 10X Health, which you might see some of the stuff going on, and Revive, which is a big worldwide company as well too. Right now, we're involved in a national expansion. Big burden. I have a pharmacy that I'm part owner in Houma, Louisiana, a specialty pharmacy. So we do pretty volatile combinations of different type of medications, and really just like I said, man, I'm chasing two or three big giants right now that I plan on having my business be recognized as theirs are nationally. So we're doing a lot of different things that will be legacy type things for sure.
Awesome, man. I don't have any more questions for you. Is there some way that friends, family, um, fans can keep up with you and follow what you have going on today?
Yeah, I'm usually pretty active on Facebook, to be honest. And also my son, Richie, my oldest son, he's pretty active on Instagram. I'd say on Facebook probably. I I don't really hide behind like I'm afraid to offend people. I say what's real, man. And I think right now we're in a part time of our country where we need more men to step up. We need leaders to step up. We need people who are not afraid to speak the truth. And we need men who are also fathers to father and influence others. Right. So I'm on a big I'm very motivated to push that type of messaging right now. So if you want to be that type of dad, if you want to be that type of man, jump on my Facebook page, man, engage, follow, and we're doing some great things here. I'm part of an amazing Church of the King here that's local. I just got baptized a few weeks ago. That's very special to me, man, and just really loving the opportunity that I have to help people.
That's awesome, man. I'm out of questions, Rich. I want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart. I never mean to do this. It's not on purpose. It just comes up. I guess it's my natural way of saying thank you, and I'm honored sharing your time with the channel. Huge blessing, man, and I will for always be grateful. Thank you very much.
Awesome, brother. Thanks.
It'll take about an hour per minute to upload. I'll send it over to you as soon as it's done. If for any reason you watch it and don't like it, I'll take it down.
No, it's good, brother. I appreciate it, man.
All right. Thanks, Rich. Have a great one.
Yeah, bye.